Hello, good morning. Welcome to the Sunday Supplement. Coming up on today's show, Tottenham really in this title race after their 1-0 victory over Newcastle at Wembley yesterday. There are signs of Sarri ball. It's finally starting to take shape. Chelsea, they beat Huddersfield 5-0 at Stamford Bridge. Black Cats, they're supposed to bring luck. They brought bad luck, though, for Marco Silva yesterday. And Everton beaten 3-1 by a rampant Wolves at Goodison Park. Getting their claws out this morning, Steve Bates is the chief football writer at The People. Alison Rudd is a sports writer with The Times. Matt Law is the football news correspondent at the Daily Telegraph. Good morning. How are we?
Morning. Morning.
Don't forget to tweet the show at Sunday Sup, and the best will appear on your screen over the next 90 minutes. Let's have a look at what the papers are saying. A real mixed bag this morning. Start with Steve's paper. It's the Sunday People. Sign up or walk away. This is Mike Ashley's message to Rafa Benitez. He's got 6 weeks to agree a new contract at Newcastle United. Massive win for them in the week against Manchester City. Lost, though, yesterday against Tottenham at Wembley. According to the Sunday Mirror, though, Rafa is about to get his new contract. It's going to be a new 3-year deal. Back of the Star, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. We'll talk more about him in part 2 of today's programme. He's already planning for the future, plotting to get the Manchester United job. He knows which signings he wants to make if he gets the job at Old Trafford. Back of the Sun, big result this for Tottenham. We're going to talk about them first up on today's programme. Thor blimey, ice falling off the famous arch at Wembley Stadium yesterday. But Tottenham going on to beat Newcastle 1-0. Big win for them. Spurs, the Son hit wonder. Could he go on to be the player of the year? Interesting shout. Sunday Mirror's goals pull out, the football pull out. Gone with the wind, Higuain scoring on his home debut in the Premier League for Chelsea yesterday. Big win for Chelsea and Sarri, particularly after his comments after the 4-0 defeat against Bournemouth in the week. Higuain's world won't be the last time we see that if he keeps up this goal-scoring run. The front page of the Sun's goals pull out. That's for you, Salah. Emotional tributes yesterday to Emiliano Salah, as well as Neil Warnock, of course, and the post-match and his fitting tribute to the missing striker. Good win for Cardiff, beating Bournemouth 2-0 yesterday. Arsenal, they're in action later today. How the past has finally caught up with them. This is Jonathan Northcroft's piece ahead of their game against Manchester City at the Etihad this afternoon. And Sam Dean's piece in the Telegraph. He says Emery, he must do better against the league's best. Well, he's got that chance this afternoon against Pep Guardiola's side at the Etihad. But first up, Steve, because you were at Wembley Stadium yesterday, you watched Tottenham win eventually, and I know you had all your stats at the ready. If they drew.
We did.
But they didn't. They went on to win that game. Are they in this? Are they in it? Are they serious contenders?
No, I think they are. You have to say they are, because once again, you know, on a difficult day, they found a way to win. You know, and people, you know, our profession probably at the forefront of this vanguard said that there's no way Tottenham could remain competitive without Harry Kane for a number of weeks or Dele Alli. But they are doing. You know, they went into second place yesterday. Significant statement, in my opinion, even though obviously it could be temporary. They could fall behind again today if both Liverpool and Man City win. But nonetheless, they will have a say in the title race, because 3 of their upcoming games are away at Chelsea, Manchester City and Liverpool. So they're going to have a significant say in the title race. Whether that say is for them to actually make their own statement and put pressure on Liverpool in the final run-in, or merely to just sort of have results against those teams, we don't yet know. But definitely, I think Pochettino's come through a very difficult spell. He's felt the need in the last few weeks to justify his role at the club and his strategy. But I think yesterday was, although it was probably one of Tottenham's lesser performances, they still found that way to win.
Did he need to justify himself? Because he did. I was there on Friday at Spurs Lodge. And there was a very, very passionate and emotional speech. And it took him a while to get to it, 10 or 15 minutes in to the broadcast press conference. But he got there in the end, and he wanted to get that off his chest and remind people just how good a team Tottenham have.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's completely right. Last 3 seasons, third, second and third. I mean, who else, apart from Guardiola, who's obviously won the league title, has got a better record in English football in recent times than that? Nobody. Yet he finds himself having to defend himself quite a lot for his own strategy. Obviously, I think the comments about, you know, whether trophies are the ultimate goal for Tottenham, or whether at the moment top 4 is their trophy, if you like. Maybe that has been misinterpreted in the wrong way, particularly with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer at Old Trafford, saying that trophies are the only thing that matters for Manchester United. Whether that's damaged his credibility in terms of being in the frame for Manchester United's job, I don't know. But certainly there's no doubt he's a top manager, and I think the time now is he's said his piece. I think the time now is to let his players do the talking.
We'll talk United in a bit, Steve, but just on that Solskjaer point, was that strategic? Was that deliberate when he dropped that in before the Burnley game that we're Manchester United? Was it a very deliberate retort following Pochettino's comments after the Palace defeat in the FA Cup?
Yeah, clearly. I mean, he was asked about that, and he was asked, you know, what United's stance is on that. He was brought up in an era at Manchester United where trophies were the only thing that mattered, and you know, United during Ferguson's reign won 13 Premier League titles, numerous cups, Champions Leagues. So of course it's ingrained in their history, and it's not in Tottenham's. It's simply not. And maybe there is a different dynamic at Tottenham, but it was quite pointed that Solskjaer made the point that you know, trophies are what matters at Manchester United.
What's the difference, Ali, between being in and around it and actually going on to win it? What were the requirements here?
A requirement is the desire to be in it and not just in and around it. And I think I agree with everything Steve said about Pochettino as a manager who deserves a lot of praise. But there does seem to be the one thing about him that is slightly mysterious is that as soon as it gets to the cutting edge of it, he pulls back from whatever it takes to be a manager that can win something. So I've always found it very strange to be at a match, post-match with Pochettino when they've got through to, say, the 5th round of the FA Cup or quarter-final or whatever, and he will pull back and say, it doesn't really matter, actually, where we are in a cup competition. It doesn't matter. And you think, but you just won a match, and, you know, you might be 3 games from winning something. And he always pulls back. And I think it's similar with the title race. I think he quite likes being hot on the heels and being in amongst it. But the minute they go into second place and maybe looks like they could stay there for longer than 10 minutes, it's like he protects his players by saying, well, you know, we're top 4, we're young, we haven't spent anything, you know, let's not get carried away. There's something about that desire to want to be where it hurts the most, where you might have games where people just want to beat you and no one else, and you're under such pressure. The psychology of your team talks are under pressure. Who you pick is under pressure. That's the moment where I don't get the impression he relishes that part of it. It's almost as if, you know, like, I know, Christmas Day, it's always Christmas Eve that's nicest, but the managers that win are the ones that actually enjoy getting up and opening all the presents and love every minute of it and don't say, oh, it was much nicer the build-up, wasn't it? There's something about them grasping the moment. I don't know why it's not there, but it's not there.
Will it ever be there?
It's there. It could be there because they've got the setup. And when they move into the new stadium and when they eventually release some funds to buy, and they will carry on having their great youth setup, and if they keep hold of Pochettino and he's aware that everything's here and I have to do it, it is possible. But I don't know, it feels like there's always an excuse, and this season it's been, we're concentrating on the move to the new stadium. There's always something that's just stopping that crucial bite.
Was the money there on deadline day to bring in the players who could take them to the title?
I don't know about the players who could take them to the title. There's been money there. I mean, in the summer they could have spent money. Look, I'm told up to as much as 100 million is there for the right players. But what they're having problem in doing is identifying the players that they feel they can go out and get who will improve the squad. And it seems to be there is a slight disagreement between maybe the players that Daniel Levy would look at bringing in comparison to the players that Pochettino would want to bring in. I think, you know, targets have been put on the table by Daniel Levy and by the people at the club who Pochettino hasn't wanted to bring in. Because he's had players like Ng, like Nkudu brought in who have just made no impact. He doesn't want signings like that anymore. And then similarly, he's probably put down targets, probably like Jack Grealish last summer, who the club then didn't want to push out to go and spend as much as it would take to get them. So, look, I mean, clearly his relationship with Daniel Levy is very good, but I do think in terms of transfers there's a slight disconnect, and it's resulted in them getting nobody, although getting nobody is probably better than going out and getting the Nkudus, the Ng's, the Janssens, who are bolstering up the squad but actually not offering anything.
Does it matter that they've got this record now that they haven't signed a player in the summer transfer window, didn't sign a player in January? Does that actually matter?
Well, not if they're up there competing for the title. And, I mean, in a way, we should all be kind of relishing it and hoping that it pays off, because, you know, we talk about people wasting money all the time. We talk about bad transfer policies and all this. You know, it would say an awful lot if Tottenham went and really did something without spending a penny. It might teach a few others a lesson. And I do think it's a good lesson not to just go out and bring in whatever. You know, they seem very focused now, and if they're going to bring one in, they're going to be the right one to try and actually push them that bit further.
A lot of pressure on that. A lot of pressure on
Pochettino
and that player, whoever it is and whenever he arrives.
This is it. I mean, when they finally make a signing, their next signing, there is, as you say, there's going to be an awful lot of scrutiny on them about who wanted him, who didn't want him. Are they then taking the team onto the next level? Aren't they taking? You know, it's going to be.
That's why Peter Crouch went to Burnley.
What, rather than Tottenham?
Yeah.
Steve, can I take you on a trip down memory lane to Manchester United's first title under Sir Alex Ferguson?
Yeah.
And of course, they had enormous pressure on that team. Steve Bruce in it, enormous pressure on it. What did they have? What are the resources that they had to finally get across the line under Sir Alex Ferguson? Of course, under pressure himself to deliver the title.
Well, the only thing they had was Ferguson and his desire and his hunger. And Alison's alluded to the fact, well, has Pochettino actually got that? Some of the rhetoric he uses, you're not quite sure sometimes. But then again, you know, he's in a different place to Ferguson was at that time, I feel. I think Pochettino...
In Fergie's book, he talks about always making sure, telling his players, you can't guarantee a victory in any cup competition. The league, if you've got the best team, you should be certainly there or thereabout. But the point he makes in his book is telling his players and repeating, make sure that you're always there at the end of the season. When it counts, make sure we've got a shot at this.
And Tottenham have been, in you know, a couple of years ago when they fell away after the Battle of Stamford Bridge, they were right there. I think they're there again. You know, we're only just into February, and you can genuinely say this is probably now a three-horse race. OK, Tottenham are the third out of the three, for sure. But I think they are in the race. And they've done that over the last 2 or 3 weeks without Kane, without Ali, two of their headline acts. So I wouldn't underestimate them. And I also wouldn't underestimate Pochettino either. And you know, I take Matt's point that sometimes it's better not to buy somebody in January. You'd rather get the right player than not. And he's also showing I think he's showing his trust in the players he has. Now, that will also foster its own spirit within the dressing room, the fact that the manager is trusting that group of players. And I think they are good enough to last the distance. Whether they're quite good enough to just get over the line, I'm not quite so sure, but I'm absolutely certain that no one they would have brought in January would have got them over the line. That's for sure.
I think he has got a huge hunger and desire to win. What he talks about a lot this season is the difference between perception and reality. And he's got a good point. I mean, when you go through everything that Tottenham are up against and the way they operate in comparison to those clubs who win, he's kind of, you know, operating with a hand tied behind his back a lot of the time. And you can't just ignore, you know, the injuries, the stadium, the squad. You can't just write that off. And also, another good point he will make is if you go into a club like Manchester United, Manchester City, and even now Liverpool, because of the money they're spending, and you talk to them about what have I got to do with this job? The job is to deliver trophies, because we're going to give you the money and the resources to deliver a trophy. If you go into Tottenham at the moment, that just isn't the case. They'd love you to deliver a trophy, But they're not saying, here's the resources to deliver a trophy, so go and deliver it.
But that's an unknown as well for Pochettino, Matt, isn't it? Because if he, say, for instance, in a year or whatever, he did go to Manchester United and he was given 200 million to spend, we don't really know.
Yeah, exactly.
Is he capable of spending that money?
Yeah.
He's never been in that position where he's been able to, you know, go and attack the market and get anybody he wants.
Well, one team that does spend the money is Manchester City. Dropped to third in the table after Tottenham's victory yesterday over Newcastle. They get the chance to put that right against Arsenal this afternoon. But what happened to them at Newcastle on Tuesday night, Ali? Because the performance in the second half was unfathomable with the way that Newcastle took control and went on to score their 2 goals. And Fernandinho, who is lauded as one of the best players in his position in the world, was at fault really for both the Newcastle goals. But what happened to City on Tuesday?
It was a strange watch. It was like watching, I don't know, a beautiful piece of mechanics, a beautiful clock that had got some sort of germ in it, and it just was off key by a quarter of a second or something, and it went sort of making funny clunking noises. Because they're such a perfect machine, City, that if it doesn't quite work sometimes, the whole thing collapses almost. And towards the end of that match, it just felt like they weren't real people. They'd just been programmed wrongly, and they were just very slow and ponderous and puzzled. Why can't we find our rhythm again? Why is it broken down? I think a lot of it was down to just how well organised Newcastle were, to be perfectly honest. When there's a team as beautifully constructed as City, it doesn't work. It's tempting to just look at what went wrong with City, but they came up against a team that have, under Benitez, been criticised a lot for lacking ambition and for, you know, always trying, when they play the big teams, always looking for the draw at best, you know, not being ambitious. But in that time period, they seem to have almost perfected the art of stifling creative teams. And I was really impressed with the powers of concentration and discipline in that match. And they were unafraid of City. And they responded really well to going down to an extremely early goal, which is a sign of great mental fortitude. And I think what happened to City was they were surprised that Newcastle were not shocked by the early goal. They were surprised how well they responded to going behind. They were surprised by how much discipline they maintained. There was no sense that Newcastle was suddenly going to alter their tactics. And they just became more and more sluggish as Newcastle sucked the life out of them, actually.
I also don't think City have got a plan B under Guardiola. Guardiola is so set in his ways about playing, and it's fantastic. His philosophy is, you know, you can't challenge it. It's unbelievable. But you do recall the odd occasions at Barcelona when that carousel thing of moving it left, moving it right, moving it left, moving it, looking for the opening. When that doesn't work, on the very odd occasion, it doesn't work, as it sometimes doesn't with City, there is no plan B. There is no big man to bring off the bench to sling in a few crosses. They just stick with that plan. And sometimes, you know, the nature of football means that isn't going to work every single time. And it's very rare it doesn't work for Guardiola and City because, you know, as Ali says, they're such a well-oiled machine. But there are occasions when, you know, some of the fans would like them to have, I think, a plan B, something just a little bit different to mix it.
I heard a really interesting interview with David Seaman this week, who said that at the start of every season, Arsene Wenger used to make the Arsenal dressing room write down a list of the trophies they wanted to win in order of their preference. And David Seaman said all the English guys every year would put Premier League, Champions League. All the foreign players would put Champions League, Premier League. They used to say they had huge rows about it in the dressing room before the season. And I do think, and it can't be a coincidence that clubs struggle to defend the title, I just think that 2-3% of the desire there for the Premier League title might not be quite there. I think a lot of those players now will be thinking, really want to win the Champions League.
Well, City have proved themselves so able to win the Premier League now, and now that I think the next step for them is Europe.
I just think that might be that difference. I mean, it's an obsession with Liverpool to get over the line in the title race. And it just can't quite be the same at City because they've won the title so regularly recently. And they've got so many players there who must be thinking, I would love to get a Champions League medal.
And the Aguero moment, of course, will never be beaten. So, you know.
Well, we'll see if they fancy a shot at the Premier League and defending their crown this afternoon because, of course, they play Arsenal at the Etihad. OK, next up, we're going to go talk Chelsea. Tricky week for Sarri. Lost at Bournemouth. A big win for him yesterday against Huddersfield. More on that next. One day we're going to tell the guests that there are no ad breaks. We're just going to go Sunday Supplement live and uncut. They've just been discussing which is the bigger game. I mean, it doesn't bear thinking about this conversation. Liverpool, Manchester United on February the 20th. Manchester United, Liverpool, rather, I should say, February the 24th. Same day as the Carabao Cup final. First silverware of the season, first domestic silverware of the season. Manchester City against Chelsea. Which is the bigger game?
Liverpool, Man United. Because next season, this time, when we're reflecting on what
this
happened this
live
season...
As well. Let's go again.
No, when we're reflecting on what
From
happened, if Liverpool were to win the title, the game people will remember will probably be Man United v Liverpool. No one's going to be waxing lyrical about what happened in the Carabao Cup final, are they? Nobody ever does. It's great for the day, but in terms of its wider significance, that could be a much more significant match.
I agree.
Why? Same reasons.
Exact same reasons, yeah.
Come on.
No, I agree.
No,
I agree, because...
I've already said it. I've helped you out. I've given you all the clues here. First domestic silverware of the season. First cup final, Wembley. Manchester City, Chelsea.
If the title race is still tight, then that's a game potentially that could be really difficult. Well, it will be really difficult for Liverpool anyway. But going to Manchester United in the current climate, I'm absolutely certain that you couldn't predict how that would go if United maintain their run and the title race is still tight. That could be a significant defining day.
OK, good for Manchester United and Liverpool fans that day, but I'm going to go to the Carabao Cup final at Wembley. We've just been talking about one of the teams that are in it, which is Chelsea, and you were there yesterday. Matt was there as well. Was this Sarri ball? Was this the football that he promised, or was this Huddersfield caving in?
Well, it was a brilliant match for Chelsea to have. Huddersfield struck first, actually, and nearly scored through Aaron Moy. And I honestly think at that moment, because it was very early on, I think at that moment, if there was any question that, are the players with Sarri, is there unrest in the camp? I think they were just so embarrassed that they could have gone quite easily 1 goal behind to the team bottom of the league. They tangibly pulled up their socks and went for it and played with freedom. And Huddersfield were very open and made it easy for them, actually. We could say Huddersfield were brave, but maybe they're a bit naive at the same time. So it was a relatively easy match for Chelsea to play Sarri ball. It doesn't really matter whether Sarri ball was at the heart of that game or not. They would have won it whatever system they were playing, I would suggest. What matters now is that they have a very, very tricky February, and Sarri has made it more clear than he could make anything clear that he's not going to change his tactics. It's all about making sure what he wants to happen happens regardless of unrest, regardless of a 4-0 defeat at Bournemouth. He's going to persevere with Sarri ball. And I think really we should judge that at the end of February when he's had his cup final. He's played Man City in the league as well. Then Tottenham. They're the games where the teams he's up against have the personnel and the managerial nous to know where the weaknesses are, whether you bother closing down Jorginho, who's at the heart of Sarri ball, or not. And if it doesn't work in February and he's persevering with this quite obstinate approach, then I think you can say Sarri ball was a failure.
What you could see yesterday, even though it was Huddersfield, was that with Higuain, with a proper striker, you could see how it's meant to work now in the attacking areas, because all season they'd either been playing with Hazard as the false nine or Morata, who was basically a false nine, false footballer. And it was falling down. The whole system was falling down. They would get so far, pass, and then there was no movement from whoever was playing really through the middle, and it would fall down in those areas. You couldn't quite see. There weren't really, a lot of matches, they weren't even creating that many chances. So, albeit with it being against Huddersfield, and as Alison rightly says, you could probably played any system and they'd have won that game quite convincingly. But you got a look and a feeling for how that system is now meant to work with a proper striker. Hazard, albeit starting on the left, was playing very close to him, wasn't he? Almost like a partner. And it wasn't breaking down anymore. The three of them were working in tandem. And they were creating chances and they looked dangerous. So I definitely thought for that style of football, that was very encouraging for them.
an important Ross Barkley. I saw you talking about him on Twitter, on social media last night. You thought he was an important part of this.
I thought he was excellent yesterday. And what I would say is that a lot has been made of Jorginho and his role, and quite rightly. But that midfield three, when it's Kante, Jorginho and Kovacic, is a very stuffy midfield three. There's not a lot of creation there. Jorginho goes sideways. Kante is actually getting used to his role very well, but Kovacic is another up and downer, really. Doesn't really score or assist. And I just think with Ross Barkley in there, they've got a little bit more attacking impetus. They've got a little bit more sort of magic in there. And I thought he actually ran the midfield for them yesterday. I thought he was really good. And I do think they should stick with him for a while.
Yeah. Sarri off the hook here, but what did you think after the Arsenal defeats when he said, I can't motivate my players, this is Sarri, and then, of course, after the Bournemouth game when he repeated it, Steve, because I think the first time, OK, you accept that perhaps the interpretation a little bit different, language, new skills, that you can accept it the first time and overlook it. But what would Chelsea have thought the second time they heard him say this, after being gulped by Bournemouth?
Well, I'm sure they'd have been alarmed. You know, certainly the people higher up would have thought, hang on, what's going on here? Because, you know, the opening games of the season, first kind of third of it was going OK for them, you know? They were right up there. So something must be fundamentally have gone askew if he felt the need to come out and say that not once but twice. You know, just basically questioning whether A, the players are listening to him, and B, whether they've got the motivation to do what he wants. Which is slightly alarming, really, you know, when you've got a group of players like that. But, you know, historically, Chelsea do have these little phases, don't they? They did it under Mourinho, you know, when they'd won the title, and then the following season, it all seemed to go pear-shaped, and he was questioning their desire and motivation and mentality. And here we go again, the same things happened. But I do think the signing of Higuain could be a game-changer for them. It's a fantastic signing, that, because he will, as Matt's alluded to, Morata just wasn't good enough to play in that team and provide them with what they want, but Higuain would. I only saw, I wasn't at the game yesterday, obviously, but I saw his movement on TV for the goals, and he looks absolutely top draw. And I think, you know, sometimes when a player like that comes in, it'll give those people around him a lift, because they're not relying on Hazard all the time, or Willian to provide the inspiration. Yeah,
maybe he will make the difference. He did score twice yesterday. Was Sarri under pressure going into the game, or what sort of pressure
I genuinely
from
think,
above?
I genuinely think that had they have lost, he could well have been sacked. I really do think.
That close?
You can't go to Bournemouth and get done 4-0 and then lose at home to Huddersfield. So I do think he could have got sacked if they'd have lost. I think he's played two massive cards so early in his reign to one, call out the players, as he has done, and put such a question mark against that dressing room, and two, which I thought got missed a little bit in the week, chucking out all the staff from the dressing room. I can't see them all being delighted about that. It's pretty humiliating. Sorry, guys, I don't want you around anymore. All of you lot go and stand out of there while I talk to the players. There are going to be people thinking, what on earth? You know, he's lost the plot. So I think he's played two massive, massive cards.
What was he thinking there?
And
there's a lot of coaching. I mean, there is a lot of coaching stuff.
The only rationale I can think of is that he didn't want people butting in or saying their piece. He just wanted one voice at that moment. Or
maybe he thought it was just between him and the players. It had gone to that point where he thought, only me and them can sort this out now. No other intervention.
But it's a strange thing to do. I can't believe it wouldn't create a little bit of angst behind the scenes at that. And from a wider point of view, you know, if you're Roman Abramovich, if you're the Chelsea board and you're looking at this, you're thinking, my word, this better work.
Having said that, they're in a cup final, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean...
And they could very well be in the FA Cup final.
Yeah, they're fourth, they're in a cup final, they're in the FA Cup and then Europa League. It's always a bit like with that at Chelsea. A crisis can come round from nowhere, and when you look at it, you think, really? Are they in crisis?
Another way of looking at it is Chelsea are not an easy club to go to as a manager. They are, I mean, they're just not. So I might, if I was Roman Abramovich, be thinking, wow, he's a ballsy chap. I really admire how strong-willed he is. He's never won anything. He has no nothing. He hasn't zero show us your medals in terms of his. You know, he's a banker, for goodness sake. So and he's that focused on what he believes is right in football. And it's not like they wake up one morning at Chelsea and then realise he's never won anything. They knew what they were signing. They were signing someone who's, you know, his asset was that he believes in his philosophy.
Yeah.
And there's no point signing a manager like that if he's going to waver halfway through the season. Then what have you got? You've got a man who's been quite good at Napoli and that's it. You need somebody who totally believes in themselves. So at least he's fulfilling that part of the bargain.
Yeah. He's only 7 months in, isn't he? So, I mean, you know, I think we've got to sort of take that into account as well.
As Matt said, you just can't lose 4-0 at Bournemouth. If you're Chelsea, you want to win titles, you want to secure trophies and silverware. That's just an unacceptable. You know, the performance is unacceptable as well.
In Ferguson's day, you know, United went to Southampton and got done 6-2. I know yeah, that was the grey shirt day, but you know, they had other significant defeats. 5-1 at Newcastle, 5-0 at Newcastle. So, you know, you can have these significant results. It's how you react afterwards. And what better way than put 5 past Huddersfield. OK. How will Manchester United react today? Because they drew against Burnley in the week, unexpectedly. An excellent performance by Sean Dyche's side. Solskjaer's planning for the future. You've been writing about him in the Sunday People. It's on the back page of the Star this morning. Solskjaer talking about his transfer targets, or Manchester United's transfer targets, the input that he is having. Has he strengthened his case? Yeah, well, I mean, we asked him if you know, he was purely concentrating on just match by match preparing the team, or whether there was a greater emphasis on, you know, planning as well for future. And he sort of said, yeah, I'm planning for the future, whether I'm here or not. And even he said, even if I've gone, he said, I will still give my opinion to United on players if they want it. So it's clear he wants the job. I mean, you know, and the way things are going, if perhaps they get to a cup final, if they get past PSG, and if he finishes top 4, it's really unfathomable how they couldn't give him the job. I know there's a lot of ifs in that, but he's certainly punching above what everybody expected he might do. Do you think he should get the job? Well, I don't know whether Manchester United had focused before they got him in on their main priority being getting, say, Pochettino. If that's the case, then no, don't be deflected by that, because surely that involves a greater degree of planning for the future. And if you think he's the man that you're going to give that job to for 5 years and let him rebuild a club or build it in the way that Fergie did, don't be deflected by, you know, 8 wins out of 9 for Ole Solskjaer, even though he's done a fantastic job. You know, we still don't yet know how he's going to react when maybe, as you said before, they have 2 or 3 defeats on the bounce. We don't know how that will pan out. I put that to him actually on Friday, and he said, look... 2 or 3 defeats on the bounce, the Man United manager will be calling for him to be sacked? Absolutely. Well, the thing is, maybe because it's Solskjaer, he would get a greater degree of sympathy from the fans, and they wouldn't be too quick. You see, Mourinho, Van Gaal, Moyes didn't have any history with Manchester United. Solskjaer's got a massive history. He provided probably the club's greatest moment in '99. So that will buy him a hell of a lot of goodwill. A hell of a lot. And you can't underestimate just how much. And also the way that he's rebooted the club completely and gone back to their DNA. Has he got the stature for this, Ali? Is he talking like a Manchester United manager? Yeah, well, I think so, because I think the only reason... I take what you say, Steve, they shouldn't be deflected if they've got a long-term vision, and that vision is a certain manager, possibly Pochettino. But I would guess the other reason they might doubt whether they would want to make him a permanent appointment is, does he have the stature, as you say, to attract big names to Old Trafford? That was partly why they signed Mourinho, because he's got fingers in pies and has won things all over Europe. So they thought, yeah, he's someone that can attract people. But I think if you're Solskjaer and you've shown that you have stepped into one of the biggest clubs in the world and you're coping, I think that's stature enough. I think possibly we're entering a new phase for Manchester United where, if you know this better than me, but if you watch their bench, it's so collegiate. This is a young, relatively young, inexperienced manager who is not afraid to have Mike Phelan whispering in his ear. When something goes well, they all embrace, as if we planned that, we wanted that to happen, and we're very happy, and we don't care who shows. There's none of this one iconic face
in the dugout, it's all about me. I think that's... I don't think that's necessary for it to be one big name in the dugout. I think for it to be a collegiate thing where... And that emphasises the point about Solskjaer being a hero for the club and knowing the club inside out.
He actually made that point on Friday and said exactly what you've said, that it's not about me. And that will be an insult to my little cabal of
I think that's
coaches.
a good thing. I think it's a different approach.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's necessary if you're a big club that you have to have one man who, you know, exudes an aura that we all seem to think belongs to certain types of individual. And doesn't belong to Solskjaer. Why? Because he looks young for his age and because he failed at Cardiff City. There are many cultures, America's one of them, where if you fail somewhere, that makes you better. You don't learn to become a good manager unless you failed. I would argue he's better for it.
One of my colleagues, Simon Mullock, actually asked him a question about, you know, why, the nub of it being, are you a big enough name for this job? And he kind of bristled a little bit. Definitely, you know. Yeah. He clearly thinks he is.
Yeah, he's entitled to be upset. Sorry, Matt. He's entitled to be a little bit upset with that, isn't he? Given, as you say, he's given his history with Manchester United, who he is, and the fans also absolutely adore and idolise Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. OK, better pause for thought. Next up, Marco Silva at Everton. Welcome back. With us this morning, Steve Bates, Alison Rudd and Matt Law. Let's just remind you what's in the papers this morning. Back at the Sunday People, this is sign or walk, 6-week ultimatum, yet another ultimatum at Newcastle United. Mike Ashley's message to Rafa Benitez, sign that contract. But he's going to, according to John Richardson. This is the back page of the Sunday Mirror. Big win for Newcastle in the week against City, but of course they lost against Tottenham yesterday. Steve was there back of the Star. Steve was also at this press conference. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer planning for the future as the Manchester United manager. Will he get the job? We've just been talking about that back of the Sun. Thor blimey, ice falling off the famous arch, the iconic arch at Wembley Stadium. But a nice cool finish in the end from Son to win that game for Spurs at Wembley Stadium. OK, we're coming on to this man. Here's Marco Silva. He gets that sinking feline in the Mail on Sunday. I think we probably know where these headlines are going. Wolves, they cash in on Everton's catnap. That's the Express. It was a poor show, according to The Sun yesterday, and a catastrophic day for Silva as Everton's manager. We'll leave it there. I think you know. I think you get the hint, don't you? Matt, 3-1 defeat against Wolves at home. Not a good week for Marco Silva. Where's it all going wrong for him?
Well, set pieces.
Ali's going to talk sartorial elegance in a moment. So you can tell us about where it's all going wrong.
Well,
as the Everton manager.
For starters, they keep conceding off set pieces, and they don't seem to be able to sort it out, which is strange because they've got, you know, Keane, Zuma, Mina, all big guys. You would think one of their strengths would be heading it out the 6-yard box, and yet they just keep conceding. And this has been a theme of his management. Hull had a terrible record from set pieces under him. Watford had a bad record under set piece from him. So it's got to fall on him. He must be doing... Something's going wrong in training or his setup, or whether it's the zone or marking or what, but something isn't working. And while his players have to take some responsibility, his historical record with that would tell you that it's got to be something that he's not improving at and he's not learning.
I mean, Dom King, in his piece this morning in the Mail on Sunday, who's a regular on the supplement, he references Everton's set pieces. 16 they've conceded in all competitions. He says that's not so much bad luck, but a form of vandalism.
I mean, it is crazy. And the thing about Silva is, I didn't know how he was qualified for the Everton job. Because, I mean, he'd been sacked by Watford. He'd gone through a terrible run at Watford, having started well. Whatever you say about him, he took Hull down. I know he did some good work at Hull, but they got out of it and then slipped back down into it with him. How does that qualify you for that Everton job? I didn't get it to start with. They started quite positively with him again. Yet again, a team starts positively with Silva, and then the minute they hit trouble, he doesn't seem to be able to problem solve, and they get stuck in terrible, terrible runs. And it seems to be history repeating itself with him.
Does the image have anything to do with these appointments, Ali?
Well, I think there is some sort of foreigner snobbery. I think owners, for some reason, think overseas managers are better tacticians. I mean, you know, ridiculous, really. That's slightly seductive. Maybe he does really well in the interview process. That must be part of it.
In a cosmopolitan league, though, does anyone or should anyone care where the nationality of the manager?
They wouldn't. I don't think any owner would say that's what I'm doing. But I think I bet if you did an experiment where you had two managers discussing what their plans for the season were and what their tactical approach would be, and one delivers it with a sexy foreign accent and one delivers it with a straightforward Brummie accent. I know who'd be the most seductive to the owner. And you're saying how on earth?
How's a Brummie accent not sexy?
There are exceptions. There are exceptions.
I'm going.
But you're asking why did he?
We've never had a walk-off, Matt.
Why has he got the job?
We're close to the first one. The croissant bowl's close to going up.
You're asking why he got the job. I'm saying, well, I was asked, is that part of it? I think it is a tiny part of it. I just think you can just appear to be more knowledgeable than if you're
Ali, are you in
straight up and down.
Ali, are you in receipt of the Monday quotes from Chelsea yet from Matt Law's email?
Oh, don't bring that up.
Have you got them yet? Well, I'm just wondering whether you're going to pass them on or not.
Well, I've already filed them, so I'm hoping someone on this show doesn't then go and blurt them out everywhere.
Let's move on.
I get what Ali's saying. Obviously, we had the Sam Aladicchio, didn't we, many moons ago, with Sam, who was a former Everton manager, saying that if he'd had an Icchio on the end of his name, then he'd be revered far more. But
he said he'd have had the Real Madrid job, would he?
Yeah,
would he have done?
I'm not sure about that. But listen, in all seriousness, I'm not sure what Everton do from here. They've had way too many managers for a club of their sort of stature and history in the last few years. They can't keep changing managers. It's almost, I mean, the way Everton are conceding goals, it's almost a bit of a throwback to the Martinez era, where he was criticised by Evertonians for having this free style open game and not really kind of shoring up the defence, and he was far too concerned with how they looked and playing the beautiful game and going forward. That didn't work at Everton. Then he had Ronald Koeman, that didn't work. Allardyce, although he was kind of very pragmatic and got them out the hole, it was never going to last long term because he didn't fit their profile of what a manager should be. Yet he's actually got a better record than Marco Silva. So Everton, you've got to be really careful because they're going to get themselves in a real mess if they start talking about, is this working? What we're going to do about it. I mean, they've got to stick with Silva, and I agree with Matt defensively. They're a shambles. We were both at Millwall a couple of weeks ago in the Cup, and all three Millwall goals came from set pieces. Well, if you're conceding set piece goals to a Championship side who are struggling, you've got no chance in the Premier League because the level of detail in the Premier League from the opposition is just so superior these days that they'll just catch you out. And Everton are woefully underperforming at the minute. I made a note, which is coming very handy at this precise moment, that was their 10th defeat yesterday of the season in 25 games, the 4th at home. Now that's really pretty appalling for a team of Everton's capabilities. They've spent an awful lot of money. Yet it's just not going right. They've got a blend of youth and experience in the team, so you can't criticise that. They're not an old team. They've got plenty of young players around, but it's just not working. And the buck must stop with Silva.
The one thing they've got to hope is that the recruitment will get better now that Marcel Brands is in.
But, yeah, I know.
Because they've spent a lot of money, and yet they've still never replaced Lukaku. I mean, how do you spend all that money and not get a proper replacement in for Lukaku in all these transfer windows since he left? It's bewildering to me.
Might be a summer target for them, Mark. Some United fans wouldn't.
Well, quite,
wouldn't
yeah, and I'm sure they'd take him back. But how can they? I mean, apart from the defence, which we've talked about, their other problem is they don't ever seem to have a proper striker. They're having to, try Richarlison there and try other things and put a lot of pressure on Calvert-Lewin sometimes. And how have we gone so long without them getting in a proper? When Palace can take in Batshuayi on loan, and there's other strikers who join other clubs, and they don't seem to be able to ever get one.
You're right, because they're not playing to their own strengths either. They've got Gylfi Sigurdsson, whose delivery from set pieces and in play is pinpoint. But he needs a target man to head it in for him.
Yeah, well, they've got two wingers.
There's no one there.
They've got Bernard and Theo Walcott. Yet still, they're not finding the right formula.
They had that spell where they just kept signing loads of number 10s and they couldn't fit them all in the team. So the summer, apart from Silva himself, who for all the criticism I give him, I actually do think they should stick with him because I totally agree with Steve. Yeah. Where do you go? You've got to stick with a guy, but they've got to have a really good summer of recruitment. Really good.
Ali, just finally, will they stick with him?
I think it depends where they finish, to be honest. I mean, to carry on with the
Ninth
boring...
last season under Sam, wasn't it?
Yeah, if you carry on with the boring puns, I think what Everton need, apart from sorting out zonal marking, is a dose of catnip, and I think that's down to the manager. They look less than the sum of their parts often, and they need someone to come in with a good old-fashioned team talk and get them believing in themselves. They look very hesitant to me.
Has anyone got any other cat jokes before we
just wonder how many lives Silva's got left.
Oh,
we in a cat
your
flat.
turn.
Cat flat.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's shut the cat flat and move on to Newcastle. Newcastle United. How many lives has? Sorry, Rafa Benitez, sign or walk? He's got 6 weeks to sign this new deal, according to Neil Moxley on the back of the People. He's going to sign a new contract, back of the Sunday Mirror. But why is this story continually playing out? He got what he wanted. Miguel Almiron signing from Atalanta, club record transfer fee announced before the game it was in the works before they played Manchester City on Tuesday night at St James's Park, Steve. But where will this end?
I don't know. It's a soap opera, isn't it? I mean, you know, this is now developing a life form of its own, just like, you know, Wenger's last couple of years at Arsenal. This is the sort of almost weekly question: is Rafa staying? Is he going? I actually thought yesterday, that Newcastle were okay. That they had a really good game plan, which was obviously clearly designed and strategised by Rafa, and he's very, very good at that. And you know, the question should be, you know, do Newcastle deserve a manager like Rafa Benitez? Because, you know, the way he's kind of sort of sorting them out and the game plan he's got for them, will it keep them up? I don't know. It's going to be tight, isn't it? But I certainly think that while he's there, you know, they're punching above their weight in managerial terms, because really the way the club's gone and the investment that Ashley's made in it and kind of the vibe around the place is just not good. And again,
Tuesday night, I have to say, Steve, was the first half at St James's Park on Tuesday night was extraordinary, because the moment Manchester City, they scored 24 seconds in with when Aguero put Manchester City in front, but after that it was toxic.
Yeah, and but the fans yesterday,
until half time,
the fans yesterday were, you know, amazing again. You know, a big contingent of them travelling, and you do feel for them because they deserve a lot more. And I don't think it's going to change while Ashley's there. You know, it's just not going to change.
I think Rafa's done a brilliant job there. I do get worn down with him holding a gun to their head the whole time. I understand why he's doing it, and I get it. I just get worn down by it. Sometimes I just think, if you actually don't want to be there, or you want to walk because of Ashley and because you don't think there's going to be a change at the club, just go. Because I get so worn down by this never-ending sort of vicious circle.
But that's him, isn't it? That's his strategy. Yeah. I remember after the 2005 European Cup final in Istanbul, we had a kind of the following day debrief from him, and then his thought wasn't celebrating that victory. It was, right, what are you going to give me? You know, I need this, this and this to kick on. And that was his only thought. So I think that kind of mentality is kind of deep within him. He'll never change. Whatever club he's at, he will have that mentality.
But do you not think he's genuinely, you say it's getting to you, but you don't think he's genuinely torn in that I think he loves the club in an abstract sense, not in an Ashley sense. I think he loves the fans, I think he loves the city, but he doesn't like the way the club is run. So if he could just solve that bit of the puzzle, then he would be much happier. And there's no way he's going to solve it unless he keeps banging on about it.
It's the hardest part to solve, though, isn't it? Because while Ashley's there, it's just not going to change. I mean, they've broken their record transfer in January. It could be a very good signing. I didn't look at that sign and think that's the signing that's going to keep Rafa Benitez at Newcastle, though. That one piece of business, I didn't think, that's going to change everything for Rafa. I mean, Steve will probably know better than I, because he covers the club a bit more than I do, but I don't actually know what will it take to make him put that pen to paper. I mean, does he only put it to paper when he knows that Ashley's going? Or, yeah, I mean, I don't know. He can't. It would be strange if he signed up without some kind of assurance that things were going to change, because he surely can't sign up and then just keep going through this and keeping them afloat and keep a gun to their head. Well, we've all been saying it for ages, but something's got to change there.
But if he signs a 3-year deal, that makes Newcastle a much better prospect to buy as a club, which means he would be happier. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, isn't it?
Yeah.
No guarantee, of course, that new owners would want him as the manager. You'd think they would because of his pedigree, but obviously, you know, as Ashton's mentioned, the fact that he's constantly sniping and you know, asking for more. He seems to do that more than any other manager I know. Yeah. And sometimes, as you say, it kind of can wear you down a bit, and it can take the focus away from what's happening on the pitch, which maybe he wants to do. I don't know. Keep the pressure away from his players. He's quite good at that.
Yeah, it certainly is. Another complicated week in the life of Newcastle. United beat City on Tuesday and then lost against Tottenham at Wembley yesterday. Steve was there for that, of course. OK, next up, we're going to talk a little bit about the transfer window. Big signing for Crystal Palace. Michy Batshuayi on loan from Chelsea until the end of the season. More about that next. Welcome back. Let's talk transfer window now. And Crystal Palace, did they win the window?
Who won the window? Everyone always says. I think the people who win the window are the ones who don't have to sign anyone, because that means they've won the previous window, usually. I think that Batshuayi signing is a really good one for Palace. I think for what you can get in a January, and the fact that I think it's only about a £1 million loan fee, which these days is small. There's no obligation to buy. The wages aren't insane. I just think it's a good deal. I think he'll score goals. He's a finisher. He doesn't do an awful lot else, which is why a lot of big clubs kind of turn away from him now, because he's not one who's going to get involved much outside the box. But once he's in the box, he can finish.
And he did last season, didn't he? 7 in 10 for Dortmund. Bit of a lean spell though at Valencia. Yeah,
I don't quite know what happened at Valencia. I thought he'd go there and do well after the Dortmund loan, and it didn't work out. But his goal record for Chelsea is actually good. I think it's about 19 in 50-odd, and that would include a fair few substitute appearances. So he knows how to put the ball in the back of the net. And with Townsend and Zaha around him doing all the running, and you'd imagine a lot of crosses coming in, it will suit him.
You just mentioned Zaha there, sent off against Southampton on Wednesday night in Palace's draw. Sarcastically applauded Andre Mariner, wasn't it, the referee at St Mary's, subsequently charged with improper conduct by the FA for that gesture. Has he already been punished once? He's been punished once by the dismissal. Should he then be punished again for improper conduct?
Just from his point of view, if I was him, I'd say, no, that's wrong. I've been punished, as you say. But I think in terms of the wider picture, I think there's a danger of referees and the respect they're given with the up-and-coming VAR. It's very important they regain some stature in the game and respect, and they're separate. They're not there to be sarcastically applauded. You have to show them respect. And
but he got booked. The point I'm making now is he got booked for that. Second booking sent off.
Yes.
Subsequently charged.
Yes.
Double jeopardy.
Yes, but the point I'm making is, yes, it is counterintuitive to punish someone twice for an act, but I think sometimes you have to back referees and say, no, we don't. This is unacceptable. This goes beyond just a yellow card. This needs more than that. You need to know that you can be punished. This is sending out a message, reminding people the referees are not there to be got at, sworn at, sarcastically applauded. Their stature has to remain as you know, you have to totally respect them on the pitch. And if you let it go, and we don't have discussions about the stature of the referee and the respect he's given, then it would just become... Because one of my fears about VAR is that referees will seem to be important at all. So if you have technology taking over, and if you allow players to treat them like, oh, you're dirt, and you don't know what you're doing, it's gone. The game's gone. You have to. This is a good moment to regain control of how we treat referees, I think. Will
the FA take control of the incident with Ashley Barnes yesterday, screaming to the face of the linesman, Steve? We don't need too much of a furtive imagination to know what Ashley Barnes was saying yesterday to the assistant referee. Should he be charged?
I think so, yeah. I saw that and I thought that was way worse than sarcastically clapping a referee. The level of aggression and venom in his face as he sort of approached the linesman. He was right in his face, wasn't he? Right nose to nose. I don't think that's acceptable. You can't get away with that. I was absolutely astonished that he could have easily got a red card for that, straight red, easily, because I think that's overstepping the boundary. Listen, I know he was wound up, I know he was upset, and I know he felt there was an injustice there, he'd been hard done by, but you simply cannot react that way. You've got to have some level of self-control.
Yeah, fertile imagination, I meant to say, not furtive. You should have corrected me, Steve.
I didn't know what you were getting at.
Didn't understand me. You're not the first person to say that over the years, to be honest. Matt, Fulham Palace yesterday. Fulham lost 2-0 at Sellers Park. Is there any way out at all for Ranieri's side, given the squad that they've got, given the team and given the resources he's got available between now and the end of the season?
I can't see it. I think they're 7 points off safety now, aren't they? I mean, that's a hell of a lot to make up with about 13 games to go. There's no evidence there that would suggest they'll put a run together. They pick out the odd result like they did in midweek, and in Mitrovic they've certainly got, you know, a striker who any of the teams down there would love to have.
Can Markovic make a difference?
I don't think so, no. And also, not a different. I mean, their main problems at the back, aren't they? Markovic isn't going to help you defensively. He said he wanted to bring leaders in January, didn't he? Quite early in the window. And
it was a call for Gary Cahill to come,
yes.
I think.
But they didn't seem to sign anyone you would particularly say was a leader. So I think, well, Huddersfield definitely are doomed, and I think Fulham look doomed, and it's only really the one other spot we're probably worrying about now.
That's a shame. There was the Roy Hodgson derby, wasn't it, yesterday? Because the Fulham fans were applauding Roy and singing his name, actually, and asking for a wave. And that, of course, reflects on his rather grand achievements at Craven Cottage back in the day.
Absolutely, he's a hero there. And Roy also has a very good record when he faces former clubs as well. I don't know whether it needles him that maybe something went wrong or whatever, but I mean, he always does well against...
He did good,
yeah. No, I know, but he always does well against his former clubs, it seems. Honestly, that call for leadership, it was the right call, and they didn't get one. And I can't help think, if Gary Cahill had gone to Fulham, we'd all be saying, "Oh, they might have a chance now." There's a lot of young players. A lot of players have no experience of Premier League football, no experience of getting out of trouble. They need that.
What's going on with Gary Cahill? Why didn't he leave Chelsea in the window?
Didn't get the right offer.
As simple as that.
He's out of contract in the summer, so I think he was wary of going to a club where he might get relegated and then be out of contract with a relegation as the last thing he did. And yeah, as simple as the fact I don't think he got an offer. A, there weren't offers maybe that were attractive to Chelsea, and B, the ones that were attractive to Chelsea weren't necessarily attracted to him. It's incredible. He didn't even make the Chelsea bench yesterday, and yet Rudiger wasn't fit enough to start.
Hasn't played for 2 months, November?
It's incredible what's happened to him this season. I mean, he lifted the FA Cup as captain last season and has not only hardly played for Chelsea, but not been in their squad at all.
Does he train with the first team?
Yeah, I'm led to believe he trains with the first team, yeah. I don't think he's been ostracised, anything like that. I mean, they kept him. They had a big debate within the first few weeks of the season what to do with the captaincy, and they kept him as club captain. But yeah, it's very strange. Danny Drinkwater retired from football after winning the... great column. Basically retired from football after winning the title with Leicester. I mean, he's still there. I mean, I think he's been in one squad this season.
Retired from football.
Well, he's not playing any football, is he?
That's fine right now. Red hot.
I don't know Danny Drinkwater's people, so hopefully they haven't got my number.
But Gary Cahill put in a plea to Chelsea via the media saying, I think I've done enough for this club for you to let me to do a Petr Cech and go to another big club to play football. I mean, it's just not happened for him. I really would rather he'd been a bit more pragmatic and thought, well, I'm not going to go to a big club, I'll go to a club that needs me.
Yeah, I think he definitely would have liked to have gone out and played football. I don't think, like I say, some of the offers that went into Chelsea that he might have liked weren't what Chelsea wanted. and then the offers that they did accept weren't necessarily what he wanted.
Quick word on Huddersfield as well. Beaten yesterday, and beaten well, of course, by Chelsea. Now they really are adrift.
Doomed.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Simple
as They kind of rode the luck last year, didn't they? Had a fantastic kind of revival when last season, when they looked as though they were in trouble. They kind of climbed away from it, and things have just kind of not improved since then. But then you look at them, you look at where they've come from, you look at the resources they have, and it's no real surprise. It's really difficult to, once you get past sort of maybe 3 seasons in the Premier League, you can then start to actually bed in as though you're going to stay there a long time, and they haven't done that. And I think by sacking Wagner, they've made life a whole lot more difficult for themselves, because you fear for them coming back again, don't you, if they go down?
Yeah. So
many big clubs have gone down, bigger clubs than Huddersfield have gone down and just disappeared without trace.
Yeah. OK, tough times for Huddersfield, but big results actually last night for Cardiff, beating Bournemouth 2-0 on a very, very emotional night at Cardiff, paying tribute, of course, to their missing striker, Emiliano Sala. OK, next up, we're going to talk Championship matters. Swansea City coming next. OK, welcome back. Big news from the Statue of Liberty last night, because Hugh Jenkins, the man who was right behind Swansea City's revival, their new relatively new stadium, quit last night as the chairman of the club. How will he be remembered? Because Swansea City supporters couldn't wait to get him out in the end, and we're happy to see him go. But when you look over his entire period at Swansea as their chairman, how will you reflect on his career there?
I think it's going to be one of those where in the short term, as you say, the Swansea fans wanted him out, and there'll probably be quite a lot of joy around Swansea that he's gone out. But I think in the long term, they will recognise that this guy did an awful lot for that club, and I personally think he should go down in history as someone who achieved for a while great things at that club. I mean, I think he took them over the year before they nearly dropped out the Football League, and he went from that to helping take that club into Europe, winning a League Cup, some of the best years in their history. And I think over the fullness of time that will be recognised. It's really split into. It's funny though how when you look at it now how split his reign is. I mean, first half amazing, and he had this golden touch of appointing managers for a while. He went Martinez, Brendan Rodgers, Laudrup, and they kept getting plucked away, and everyone kind of thought, oh, this will be the end of Swans, and he kept getting the next one in. Then they'd keep the style of football. We nicknamed them Swansalona. It was a great place to go and watch football. They were brilliant in the transfer market for a while. Lots of clubs used them as a model. You know, we put them up as a model club. And then he sacked Gary Monk, possibly a little bit too early. And from that moment onwards, the appointments became a disaster. And obviously he sold up to the Americans, which doesn't look good at the moment. And decision-making has been poor since then. And it's all just fallen away. It's really strange. It's really sad for him.
Shame, because his legacy before he sold that club would have been incredibly positive, Ali. Yeah,
but maybe, you know, trying to look at it from his point of view and how difficult the job might have been. If you've got supporters' trust with a voice on the board, you have to keep happy, and then you bring in new money from America and they control you. The balancing act where you had sort of carte blanche and you could make your Swansalona appointments is gone. And I think the greatest example of that was you had Americans suddenly calling the shots, and they appointed an American manager who had, Bob Bradley, who had no experience whatsoever in Premier League or high-level football, and was so out of his depth. And poor bloke had to deal with the constant question of, are you only here because the owners like your accent, because we don't know why you're here. And I don't think I've come across any manager who made so many changes per game as him in his attempt to work out what to do in the Premier League. and it just started to fall apart. But I think sometimes just having serene, complete control and then having to juggle vested interests, I think he probably got quite tired of it all and the abuse from the fans in the end.
I want to touch on Sheffield Wednesday as well, Steve, because Steve Bruce, a man you know very well from his time, of course, at Manchester United and beyond as a manager, got off to a good start yesterday, got off to a winning start at Ipswich. Are you pleased to see him back?
Yes, indeed, yeah, I am. And I know he took some sort of criticism for being in Barbados watching the England cricket team, which can't have been any fun, really, can it, really, let's face it, for having that break and that holiday. But, you know, he took criticism on social media. Actually, it wasn't the... I was looking into that quite a bit because they played a cup tie against Chelsea, so I was having a look at, you know, where they'd been, what they'd been doing. And that decision to have that break was with the blessing of the Sheffield Wednesday owners and the board. They gave him that time because, obviously, you know, he lost both his parents and he had a tough time personally and then lost his job at Villa. And, you know, sometimes, you know, managers do need to take a step back, and why would you criticise anybody for doing that, particularly when you know the personal nature of the kind of setbacks that hit him and his family? What, you know, you would give somebody the space they need. David Wagner, actually, talking about Huddersfield, he said the pressure of managing just got to him and he just needed a break, and that's the case sometimes. But I think Sheffield Wednesday are getting a manager there who is absolutely an ideal fit for Sheffield Wednesday at this moment in time. You know, often, and we're talking about recruitment like Swansea, often managers are brought in with no real thought as to the strategy and how they're going to actually fit in. But for what Sheffield Wednesday need at the moment, Steve Bruce fits the description absolutely perfectly. The big problem he's got, of course, is if another transfer embargo is placed upon Sheffield Wednesday because they're fallen foul of fair play rules. If that's going to hamper him doing his job. But that said, he's still got great capabilities, and I think four promotions from the Championship to the Premier League. I'm not saying Sheffield Wednesday are actually at that point yet, but if they were to be able to get some finance from somewhere and some backing and resources for him, I think he's perfectly able of taking that club up. Yeah, and still a big club, of course, as well. Wednesday, you know, you forget they're one of those fallen giants that have gone down and sort of almost disappeared without trace, but they still get big crowds and they've got a huge away support. Yeah, they got 9 points as well off the playoffs. You never know, do you? You never know. You never know how things could turn out in football. And but welcome back to Steve Bruce, returning yesterday, a winning return as Sheffield Wednesday manager, a 1-0 victory at Ipswich. Also, just want to mention, good win, big win for Norwich yesterday up at Ellen Road against Leeds United. Norwich top and fancy their chances of returning to the Premier League. OK, we have to leave it there. We've run out of time. Thanks so much to the guys this morning. Thanks to Steve, to Ali and to Matt for your company this morning. We'll see you again very soon.
Sky Sports. Feel it all.